Top of the day, beautiful people. Top of the day. Right there. All right. Good morning, James. All right, beautiful people. Let me put my passage in here as we go. Okay, no, wrong version. Okay. Top of the day, beautiful people. Happy Monday. It is August the 3rd, 2020, day 216, and we are reading Ezekiel 41, 42, and 43. So let's get started right here straight away. All right, why is this not changing? Okay, there we go. All right, y'all. Ezekiel chapter 41. Betwabu, Trina. Hello, beautiful people, said Tiffany. Okay. Morning, James. All right, gotcha. All right, Ezekiel chapter 41. After that, the man brought me into the, remember yesterday, we was going over the temple measurements that, the eastern gate, the western gate, the southern gate, and the northern gate, right? They were all built the same. All right, Ezekiel chapter 41. After that, the man brought me into the sanctuary of the temple. He measured the walls on either side of its doorway, and they were 10.5 feet thick. The doorway was 17.5 feet wide, and the walls on each side of it were 8 3/4 feet long. The sanctuary itself was 70 feet long and 35 feet wide. Then he went beyond the sanctuary into the inner room. He measured the walls on either side of its entrance, and they were 3.5 feet thick. The entrance was 10.5 feet wide, and the walls on each side of the entrance were 12 1/4 feet long. I guess I should say like 1 1/4. The inner room of the sanctuary was 35 feet long and 35 feet wide. This, he told me, is the most holy place. Then he measured the wall of the temple, and it was 10.5 feet thick. There was a row of rooms along the outside wall. Each room was 7 feet wide. These side rooms were built in 3 levels, one above the other, with 30 rooms on each level. Excuse me. The support for these side rooms rested on exterior ledges on the temple wall. They did not extend into the wall. Each level was wider than the one below it, corresponding to the narrowing of the temple wall as it rose higher. A stairway led up from the bottom level through the middle level of the top level. I saw that the temple was built on a terrace, which provided a foundation for the side rooms. This terrace was 10.5 feet wide. The outer wall of the temple's side rooms was 8 3/4 feet thick. This left an open area between these side rooms and the row of rooms along the outer wall of the inner courtyard. This open area was 35 feet wide, and it went all the way around the temple. 2 doors opened from the side rooms into the terrace yard, which was 8 3/4 feet wide. One door faced north and the other south. Let me ask y'all something real quick. Greetings, Uncle Nathaniel. Anybody ever thought about who, through all these years, kept such details about this when he was getting this from a vision? Sometimes I wonder about that. I said, this is really, 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 really detailed. And it caused me to think about some things, So I just keep reading and looking. I'm like, Ezekiel was a very good scribe, that he kept such detail after his vision. Now, I do know that when you have like a vivid dream or a vivid vision, you can remember every single detail of the dream. Like, I can remember every single detail of some vivid dreams that I had when I was a little girl. Like, it's like indelibly imprinted on my mind, So I don't think it's impossible that such detail could be recorded and preserved throughout the years, I don't doubt that one bit, but sometimes I look at even with in Leviticus and stuff, I'm like, this is extremely detailed, so I'm just saying, okay. The sanctuary, the inner room, and the entry room of the temple were all paneled with wood, as were the frames of the recessed windows. The inner walls of the temple were paneled with wood above and below the windows. I'm trying to see if I can get it drawn out so I can compare it. Yeah, Tiffany, share it with me when you do. Excellent point out one about a lot of the details. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. the 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 sanctuary, the inner room, and the entry room of the temple were all paneled with wood, as were the frames of the recessed windows. The inner walls of the temple were paneled with wood above and below the windows. The space above the door leading into the inner room and its walls inside and out were also paneled. All the walls were decorated with carvings of cherubim, each with two faces, and there was a carving of a palm tree between each of the cherubim. One face, that of a man, looked toward the palm tree on the one side. The other face, that of a young lion, looked toward the palm tree on the other side. The figures were carved all along the inside of the temple, from the floor to the top of the walls, including the outer wall of the sanctuary. There were square columns at the entrance of the temple, and the ones at the entrance of the most holy place were similar. There was an altar made of wood, 5 1/4 feet high and 3.5 feet across. Its corners, base, and sides were all made of wood. This, the man told me, is the table that stands in Yahuwah's presence. Both the sanctuary and the most holy place had double doorways, each with 2 swinging doors. The doors leading into the sanctuary were decorated with carved cherubim and palm trees, just as on the walls. And there was a wooden roof at the front of the entry room to the temple. On both sides of the entry room were recessed windows decorated with carved palm trees. The side rooms along the outside wall also had roofs. All right, next chapter, Ezekiel chapter 42. Then the man led me out of the temple courtyard by the way of the north gateway. We entered the outer courtyard and came to a group of rooms against the north wall of the inner courtyard. This structure, whose entrance opened toward the north, was 175 feet long. What happened? Okay, I keep my finger off of that. This structure, whose entrance opened toward the north, was 175 feet long and 87.5 feet wide. One block of rooms overlooked the 35-foot width of the inner courtyard. Another block of rooms looked out onto the pavement of the outer courtyard. 2 blocks were built 3 levels high and stood across from each other. Between the 2 blocks of rooms ran a walkway 17.5 feet wide. It extended the entire 175 feet of the complex, and all the doors faced north. Each of the upper levels of the rooms were narrower than the one beneath it because the upper levels had to allow space for walkways in front of them. Since there were 3 levels and they did not have supporting columns as in the courtyards, each of the upper levels was set back from the level beneath it. There was an outer wall that separated the rooms from the outer courtyard. It was 87.5 feet long. This wall added length to the outer block of rooms, which extended for only 87.5 feet, while the inner block, the rooms toward the temple, extended for 175 feet. There was an eastern entrance from the outer courtyard to these rooms. On the south side of the temple, there were 2 blocks of rooms just south of the inner courtyard between the temple and the outer courtyard. These rooms were arranged just like the rooms on the north. There was a walkway between the 2 blocks of rooms just like the complex on the north side of the temple. This complex of rooms was the same length and width as the other one, and it had the same entrances and doors. The dimensions of each were identical, so there was an entrance in the wall facing the doors of the inner block of rooms and another on the east at the end of the interior walkway. Then the man told me, "These rooms that overlook the temple from the north and the south are holy. Here the priests who offer sacrifices to Yahuwah will eat the most holy offerings. And because these rooms are holy, They will be used to store the sacred offerings, the grain offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings. When the priests leave the sanctuary, they must not go directly to the outer courtyard. They must first take off the clothes they wore while ministering, because these clothes are holy. They must put on other clothes before entering the parts of the building complex to they must put on other clothes before entering the parts of the building complex open to the public. When the man had finished measuring the inside of the temple area, he led me out through the east gateway to measure the entire perimeter. He measured the east side with his measuring rod, and it was 875 feet long. Then he measured the north side, and it was also 875 feet. The south side was also 875 feet, and the west side was also 875 feet. So the area was 875 feet on each side, with a wall all around it to separate what was holy from what was common. Last chapter for today, Ezekiel chapter 43. After this, the man brought me back around to the east gateway. Suddenly, the glory of Israel appeared from the east. The sound of his coming was like the roar of rushing waters. All right, call me when you're ready to drop it off. All right. The sound of his coming was like the roar of rushing waters, and the whole landscape shone with his glory. The vision was just like the others I had seen, first by the Kibar River, and then when he came to destroy Jerusalem. I fell face down on the ground, and the glory of Yahuwah came into the temple through the east gateway. Then the Spirit took me up and brought me into the inner courtyard, and the glory of Yahuwah filled the temple. And I heard someone speaking to me from within the temple, while the man who had been measuring stood beside me. Yahuwah said to me, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne, and the place where I will rest my feet. I will live here forever." Oh, I thought he was talking to me. Let me read that again. Then Yahuwah said to me, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne, and the place where I will rest my feet. I will live here forever among the people of Israel. They and their kings will not defile my holy name any longer by their adulterous worship of other gods, or by honoring the relics of their kings who have died." That's a really key point. Remember, it's the lineage of King David who rules, and he said they will no longer worship the relics of previous kings who have died. King David is not coming back to life. I know some people believe that. It blew me away. I'm like, no, how did y'all get that? Because they're not understanding how Yahuwah speaks, and they're not familiar with how he talks. Okay, all right. I'll read that. I'll read verse 8 again. No, I'll go back to 7. Then Yahuwah said to me, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne, and the place where I will rest my feet. I will live here forever among my people, among the people of Israel. They and their kings will not defile my holy name any longer by their adulterous worship of other gods, or by honoring the relics of their kings who have died. They put their idol altars right next to mine, with only a wall between them and me. They defiled my holy name by such detestable sin, so I consumed them in my anger. Now let them stop worshiping other gods and honoring the relics of their kings, and I will live among them forever." Son of man, describe to the people of Israel the temple as I have shown you, so they will be ashamed of all their sins. Let them study its plan, and they will be ashamed of what they have done. Describe to them all the specifications of the temple, including its entrances and exits, and everything else about it. Tell them about its decrees and laws. Write down all these specifications and decrees as they watch, so they will be sure to remember and follow them. And this is the basic law of the temple, absolute holiness. Bruh, that's so good. That is so good. That is, when I read that, it's like, and this is the basic law of the temple. We can use it as like a physical temple or the basic law of this temple as well. Absolute holiness is what we should be. Absolute holy. I'm going to read that again. That was so good. I got to read it again. Hold on. I'm going to go to 10. Son of man, describe to the people of Israel the temple I have shown you, so they will be ashamed of all their sins. Let them study its plan, and they will be ashamed of what they have done. Describe to them all the specifications of the temple, including its entrances and exits, and everything else about it. Tell them about its decrees and laws. Write down all these specifications and decrees as they watch, so they will be sure to remember and follow them. And this is the basic law of the temple, absolute holiness. The entire top of the mountain where the temple is built is holy. Yes, this is the basic law of the temple. Now, you know what? When I read that again, what popped in my head, we only got a few more verses to read. When I think about the temple and think about our bodies and how it says, it's not in parentheses, but it brings it out. It says, describe to them the specifications of the temple. Like, describe to them what their body was created for, including its entrances and exits. And so when I read that, I wanted to say something, but I didn't say it, you know. But an older pastor of mine used to say, if you don't understand a purpose of a thing, you will abuse it, right? And a lot of times, a lot of us don't understand the purposes of our bodies, so we abuse them, whether it's overeating, or whether we're indulging in sexual sin, or whether we're indulging in abominable type sins, sexual sins, or whatever the case may be. We're defiling the temple. Not only do we defile outwardly, but we defile inwardly. And that's what I think he said. And I just said it too, it's such detail, because it causes you to sit and think about your life and consider your ways and like, what am I doing? You know, you really have to sit there and ponder over your life and everything that you do. That's why, as I read it again, I just started thinking, I was like, oh, that's why it's so detailed. Like, we really have to look at ourselves and inspect every area of our lives and make sure that it lines up. Yeah, Trina said, I remember him saying that. Yeah, so that it just popped in my head, so just like basic things like a fork. A fork was designed for you to eat food with. A fork wasn't designed for you to go stab somebody with. If you don't understand the purpose of a thing, you will abuse it. That tool in itself is not wrong. It's not a wicked thing. It's how it's being used, which causes it to be a wicked and a hurtful thing. You see what I'm saying? All right. Okay. All right, let me read these last few verses. Verse 13. These are the measurements of the altar. There is a gutter all around the altar, 21 inches deep and 21 inches wide, with a curb 9 inches wide around its edge. And this is the height of the altar. From the gutter, the altar rises 3.5 feet to a lower ledge that surrounds the altar and is 21 inches wide. From the lower ledge, the altar rises 7 feet to the upper ledge that is also 21 inches wide. The top of the altar, the hearth, rises another 7 feet higher, with a horn rising up from each of the 4 corners. The top of the altar is square, measuring 21 feet by 21 feet. The upper ledge also forms a square, measuring 24.5 feet by 24.5 feet, with a 21-inch gutter and a 10.5-inch curb all around the edge. There are steps going up the east side of the altar. Then he said to me, Son of man, this is what Yahuwah says. These will be the regulations for the burning of the offerings and the sprinkling of blood when the altar is built. At that time, the Levitical priests of the family of Zadok, who minister before me, are to be given a young bull for a sin offering, says Yahuwah. You will take some of its blood and smear it on the 4 horns of the altar, the 4 corners of the upper ledge, and the curb that runs along the edge. This will cleanse and make atonement for the altar. Then take the young bull for the sin offering and burn it at the appointed place outside the temple area. On the second day, sacrifice as a sin offering a young male goat that has no physical defects. Then cleanse and make atonement for the altar again, just as you did with the young bull. When you have finished the cleansing ceremony, offer another young bull that has no defects and a perfect ram from the flock. You are to present them to Yahuwah, and the priests are to sprinkle salt on them and offer them as burnt offering to Yahuwah. Remember, they cooking, y'all. They cutting up the meat, they cleaning it, they draining the blood. Thank you, y'all, for this food. He says, season that meat up with some salt and go ahead and put it on the fire. You are to present them to Yahuwah, and the priests are to sprinkle salt on them and offer them as a burnt offering to Yahuwah. And remember, when it's a burnt offering, they don't eat it. They just cook it till it's completely burnt away, right? That's a burnt offering. And that way the smell, y'all know how meat smell when it cooks. It gives off this savory, it's like, what y'all cooking up in here? So that's what he said. Don't nobody, that's most holy. Just let that burn completely away. Every day for 7 days, a male goat, a young bull, and a ram from the flock will be sacrificed as a sin offering. None of these animals may have physical defects of any kind. Do this each day for 7 days to cleanse and make atonement for the altar, thus setting it apart for holy use. On the 8th day and on each day afterward, the priest will sacrifice on the altar the burnt offerings and peace offerings of the people. Then I will accept you. I, Yahuwah, have spoken. And that, my beautiful people, is our reading for today. That was Ezekiel 41, 42, and 43. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be out of Ezekiel by the end of this week, and then we go right into the book of Daniel. And also, when we read the book of Daniel, we're going to add the missing chapters, Bel and the Dragon and Susanna. I know Bel and the Dragon kind of throws people off because how it's named, like Bel and the Dragon, what? No, I think I gave an overview about what that was before. It's talking about the king and his servants who was deceiving him, telling him that, oh, your gods in the temple is who eating up all the food, the offerings and stuff, so your God is real. And Daniel was like, King, listen, let me show you something here. He said, I'm going to show you that your people are doing this. There are no other gods except for Yah. Then you'll see when we get to it. But most of y'all probably already read it because I read over it. I did. I read it last year when we read through Daniel. But okay. So that's it for today, y'all. Gotta get going. Have to go get some work done. So let's go ahead and do the blessing, which is found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 22. Chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us his peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, beautiful people, I love you. I see you bright and early on the morrow. Peace.